So as we're moving to winter, and I know a lot of guys have already weaned, and we're kind of getting late on that process. But from a nutritional management and a body condition scoring time frame, there's a couple of time frames that we really need to consider the impact of body condition scoring for our management, but also from the response of that cow. And this is a slide I use a lot for supplementation strategies, but it really fits body condition scoring as well, in the sense of understanding those requirements and the impact of your nutritional environment or your strategy can have during that time frame on body condition scoring. And it's, that late gestation time point, which body condition scoring during that time can not only affect that cow's performance rebreeding after calving, but also can have an impact on that subsequent calf and that calf crop. And so that's important. And the next step that is body condition score calving and the impact that it has not only on reproduction of that timing of getting cows to recover after calving, start cycling, and get bred again. So we really use body condition score as this monitoring of nutrient status. And so it's just a subjective way to monitor what's the condition and direction cows are going. And so when we think about body condition score, we really got to think about direction and timing of when we're taking that body condition score. What's the forage quality aspects? Where are we headed to? Because we can talk about body condition scoring in several different ways, and depending on season and calving and forage quality analysis, they don't always mix. And so there's some seasons of calving that I can take a body condition score at certain time frames, but know that I have high quality forage, whether or not it's green up or it's an annual that's coming up, that will help buffer that. And so, but in general, we think about taking body condition scores late summer, and late summer is very important in thinking about timing of weaning. And a lot of times we get stuck in habits of we wean at this time point, we start feed different supplements at this time point. And that can run into a lot of issues, and a lot of producers ran into that. A few years ago, when we were in a drought or a high rainfall conditions, but our forage quality is very low, cows came off of that weaning very thin, and then in March we had very wet and cold weather, and that they were really set up poorly for that cold and wet winter due to the fact they were thin already, and they didn't have a chance to rebound, gain some condition prior to that winter. And so late summer is very important from the aspect of when should I wean? And do I need to wean some cows, especially my young females, my 2s and 3s? Should I wean those earlier than normal because they are in a thinner state than they may normally be? And so late summer is a good time to start taking those condition scoring of where my cows are and what direction are they going with the nutrient environment that we have. Another one is at weaning. As we wean, taking body condition score. And this is important that you're setting up that cow, let's say a spring calving situation, that we're setting up that cow to have enough condition to get through that winter and calve in a good body condition score. And so with a lot of mature cows, sometimes we let this slip a little bit, and most years or some years they do fine with that. But it can set you back in terms of not knowing what kind of winter we're going to have and being able to get to that winter without issues of calving in a very, very thin body condition score. Start a third trimester, so about 90 days out. And so the reason why that's different than at weaning is depending on your weaning time. We've got in the Sand Hills, we've got guys still haven't weaned yet in November. We've got guys that wean in December, and some guys that wean in January. And so their start of third trimester could be before weaning time. And for a lot of guys that start third trimester, maybe a month or so before, or a month or so after weaning. And so that's what the reason why we talk about those slightly different is because management around that time can be completely different. And then the last one is that calving. And so from a management standpoint, in a lot of our environments, that at weaning is a key time point of being able to put condition score back on that cow, let that cow rebound, and start putting condition on her before that winter hits. The reason why we don't talk about third trimester is because that could differ due to the season of calving that they're in. And so like a summer calving situation, that's totally different than a March calving situation in terms of when that occur and when that weaning actually does occur as well. But when we think about body condition score, one, it is an indicator, a very good indicator of stored reserves. And a lot of times we think about body condition as just fat, and it's not. It's both fat and protein tissue. And so when I teach body condition score in a hands-on situation, it's really good to get cows that, there's very few cows that hit basically a true 5, a body condition score 5, or a true 6, especially in a thinner state, that cows will lose body condition at different areas. And some cows will mobilize lean tissue faster than they will mobilize fat tissue. And older cows, it's why they may show a little bit more of a spine or differential of that spine is because of lean muscle loss and not necessarily fat tissue. And so we've got to take into account that protein tissue as well as fat tissue, because one, they will mobilize those at different rates. And the importance of one or the other, and from my experience, and maybe my bias, is protein tissue is more important than lean tissue, especially when you get into the organ side. Because some organs will mobilize, they'll mobilize lean tissue from organs before they will from, let's say, muscle tissue. And that's when we can get into some major issues in cows that are thinner, is because of organs are not large enough to respond, especially to the demand of maybe lactation and trying to recover from breeding. So why is body condition score important? One, there's a close relationship between body condition score at calving and the first 9 days after calving to a reproductive success. And this is important. There's historically, I'll show you some data later on that body condition score, one of the most important things about body condition score is just driven to reproductive success. Am I setting those cows up to be able to succeed in that management, the environment that we manage? Another aspect that's very important is calf immune system. And I'll show you some data that calves from thin cows have issues with immune function, immune health. And so if I'm constantly weaning or constantly calving thin cows, I can have calves that have some compromised immune function due to that fact. And so that's an important thing to take into account. I know 2 years ago when we went through that winter, feeders were scared to death to buy calves out of Nebraska. And there was a lot of concern because of the state of those cows and the amount of sickness that could occur in those calves once they received them. And so body condition score of that dam can play a big role in immune function of that resulting calf that's born maybe a little bit later on. So current body condition score is a result of, one, could be a balance between nutrient supply and recent nutrient requirements. So understanding cow nutrient requirements and where is my forage supply or whatever nutritional management strategy I have, what is the direction that I'm going? And so So if they're losing body weight or have a deficiency somewhere in that system, if they're gaining body weight, we have a surplus. Management can play a role in what the current body condition score of that cow is. And then lastly, and this is something I see a lot, is a match or a mismatch of cow's genetic potential in that forage or management system that you have. If I'm selecting for animals from a genetic base that do not fit my environment, whether or not it's too much or too little, I can have cows that are way too thin, or I have cows that carry a lot more weight, that carry a lot more condition year round. And so we don't want cows on either end of that. You know, we want cows that kind of hit that moderate body condition score year round. So if you think about key areas to evaluate from a scoring aspect, one, and this is two good examples, this is a slide from Oklahoma State, but two good examples of a cow that at the top is a cow that's in a very good body condition score, and a cow that on the bottom is a very thin cow. But two key areas to evaluate is that top line, that vertebrae, so that spine over the shoulders and across the ribs. And so this can also be areas that's hard for a lot of producers to score correctly. And because of, and we'll talk about this later, but hair coat can play a role. Some cows will actually have more of a thinner top line, so show a little bit more vertebrae, but actually have a lot more cover on their ribs. So I could undercall a body condition score by just going off of that vertebrae and not taking into account the total condition score of those cows. Next area is that rib. So how much fat cover is covering on those ribs? And so the top cow has no ribs actually showing. The bottom cow has at least probably 4 ribs showing. And so rib cover tells us a lot. It's very similar to that top cover, but cows will mobilize or gain fat in those areas totally different. So I've seen cows that had all the ribs not showing, but show a little bit of vertebrae, and vice versa, where you know, we can set up these guidelines. This is a 5, 6, 7, whatever, and they don't necessarily fit those guidelines completely. So you've got to really take into account the total package of where that fat cover or lean muscle is. And one of the last areas to look is that lumbovertebrae. So that's hook and pin areas of that cows. And so thin cows will be totally, basically a tight, very, very tight looking from that hook to pin area, where you start getting fat deposition in cows that are in good condition and above, that they'll start gaining a lot of fat or have these fat prone areas on that top area. And then there's the hook and pins, like I said earlier. So when we see the cows that are in this body condition score 7, 8, 9, the tailhead area, the sacrum area, is where we start seeing those areas really prone to have high fat deposition. And so normally, in my career, I've probably seen very few cows, unless they're open cows that are ran year round, in our environments that get into that body condition score that would start having fat prone areas on their tailhead. I've probably scored less than 10% of cows over a body condition score 6 in my career. Most of them run between 3 to 6. And it's really due to the areas and the type of cows that we manage in some of, especially in the semi-arid environments, that we can't afford or don't have the nutritional environment to withstand cow in that body condition score. Brent, you got a question?
Yeah, Travis, I don't know if you're going to cover this later or not, but you talked about, late summer, times like that when they're out on pasture.
Yep.
Couple of questions. One is there a certain time of day that you want to drive through your herd to body condition score? I'm thinking, shadows,
Yep.
whatever reason, or does it matter? I guess is my first question.
Yeah. Yeah. So it can matter, I guess, in certain ways. You can, especially if you have hair coats, long hair coats, you're going to have shadows. So that makes it tougher for people to see. Midday is pretty easy, but a lot of cows are laid up midday. And so I think, and we've talked about this quite a bit, that to be able to drive through your cows and know what their actual condition score is outside of maybe thin and good, they've got to actually put their hands on cows and palpate them. You cannot teach yourself body condition scoring by this presentation or a video or something online. To body condition score cows or learn what these are, you've got to put your hands on them. And so you've really got to adjust your eye to those body condition scores by your hand first. And there's data out of Canada that showed a correlation that's very, very low of people that trained a body condition score and their ability to actually score cows out on pasture without putting their hands on them. And so that's very important is, you run out to the chute, put your hands on them and start body condition scoring that way first and learn, basically teach your hand or your eyes with your hand of what you're feeling. But it's sometimes, like I said, it can be deceiving due to different shadows, hair coat, gut feel can all play a role in underestimating what that true body condition score is. If we went through a blizzard or any kind of snow event where those cows may not have ate or drank much water during that time frame, they're going to look a body condition score half less than they truly are. And so, not body condition scoring after an event like that because, you're going to think those cows are thinner than they truly are once they get back up and grazing in or drinking water again. And so, but for most part, I would say as long as you're going out there where you can visibly see those cows pretty good, get pretty good eyes on those cows, it shouldn't matter too much. As long as I think the big deal, unless you want to just call them thin, we can look at these two pictures and say, cow on the bottom is very thin. Cow on top is very fat, right? And so those are easy. But to call a cow 4 or 5 or 6 sometimes can be very difficult for producers from that aspect. And so, when I talk to guys, as long as they can evaluate what is thin, what is, pretty good condition and what is fat. And to try to break it down a little simpler than a body condition of 4, 5, 6 kind of helps. But if they go through a system like, say, the ranch practicum that they're putting their hands on cows constantly, they should be getting where they're very comfortable with actually scoring those cows from the chute and hopefully from a pasture base as well.
Thank you.
And then the last thing is you'll see this is part of that lean tissue, and they didn't cover it in these with this as well, with the lean tissue on that rear quarters, but you also have lean tissue along that spine. You see a lot of young females that are thin, or even old cows that are thin, that won't have that lean tissue on their rear quarter or won't have that lean tissue that's on their top line. It's because they've been mobilizing that lean tissue to support their nutritional needs. So we'll quickly, we use in a body condition score setting a 1 to 9 system. And we won't really cover this because I don't think that's as truly as valuable unless we sit down and touch cows and go through each individual one of these. And so really the goal of body condition scoring is being able to tell what cow is in a thin state. So anything that's less than a 5, so 4 and less. And cows that are in good state, 5 to 6. And then we get into that fleshy to fat situation over a 6. But one thing to note with this is when I have cows in that thin state, it's going to take 70 to 100 pounds for that cow to move up to a better condition. And so that's very important to think about, especially in late gestation. Because the other component of late gestation is, so if I have cows in body condition score 4, and if I want a calf in 5, not only she has to gain 70 pounds to get to a 5, she also has to gain an additional 100 pounds in that because of fetal growth. And so that's an important aspect in that condition scoring is, or management, that if I need to move them up and they're very thin, that I've also got 100 pounds of fetal growth to take in count in that nutritional plan to get them where they need to be. So I stole this from Rick Rasby. This is one of the body condition score guides that we have online. The cool part about this, and makes it easier, is this is the same cow. And so this is just basically a reference to see what a body condition score 4, 5, and 6 is. If we look at the top line of this cow in these pictures, you'll see, more or less cover across those as we go, less cover from a 6 down to 4, more cover the opposite way. And then the rib difference of showing 3 ribs in body condition score 4, and then showing maybe the back 2 or that back rib in body condition score 5. Where in body condition score 6, very flat top line, a lot of cover, and no ribs showing. And so, it's a nice 3-picture setting of what a cow in a body condition score 4, 5, and 6 actually is. So some challenges of body condition score is one, and we talked about this, your eyes need to be calibrated if you're going to call them a 4, 5, 6, whatever, with palpating. And I see this problem a lot is people either underestimate condition scores or overestimate condition scores without understanding or without that calibration in their eye with their hand. And so some of that is we've got to take into account hair coat. When we get in these color conditions, when hair coat gets long, we can overestimate body condition scores because we're not seeing those ribs or we're not seeing those markers. So being able to see through that hair coat is important. Gut feel can cause this. And so if I've got cows that have been tanked up on hay, and have this massive gut feel, sometimes I can overcall those cows with my eyes due to your eyes tend to go down to that gut feel. And so you see that bigger barrel of that cow and you start overestimating that body condition score because that's where your eyes are taking you. Or we can cull cows in worse conditions after that storm. They may be a body condition score 5, that storm hits, they may have been off of water or limited grazing at that point. We go out and check on, a lot of guys would call them a 4, 4.5. Give them a day or two after that storm, they're back to that 5. And so that's an important thing to consider is that, what cows coming off feed and water will do is kind of shrink up and not to use that as your scoring that my cows are thin because of that storm. And they could, because, a couple of years ago when we had that wet, cold winter, we had cows losing body condition score in 30 days or more. But that's a totally different challenge that just one storm coming in or one blizzard coming in causes. So if we think about thin cows at weaning, what will this or what will actually occur to some of our performances, or what should we do from a management side is, so we think about weaning to 90 days prior to calving, whatever that is for you as a producer. it's a good window to increase body weight and body condition scores. And the reason behind it is we're taking that calf off. As soon as we take that calf off and we decrease lactation requirements, she'll be able to utilize those energy for her body and start putting on that condition score back. And so this is why weaning is such an important supplementation strategy. And it's not just a management strategy, it should be focused on, it's a supplementation strategy as well, because I can use that as a supplement to get cows back in a better body condition score if they're thinning. Yeah. 90 days to calving, this is our last chance to from an economics standpoint, this may be my last chance to put body condition score back on a cow. And now we're running into some issues with increased nutrient requirements by fetal growth. So that's the largest fetal growth period occurring. And so if you think about the two highest nutrient requirements for a cow occur during early lactation and late gestation. And so depending on when this 90 days to calving occurs in your scenario, we could be running into a lot more winter weather, a lot more cold stress. And that can really decrease or inhibit our ability to put more condition score on those cows. And so that needs to be taken account into your management strategy, especially if you're, let's say, a May calving or April calving system, that 90 days to calving, you may be in the heart of our winter system and to some of our really cold, wet winters. So it's pretty hard to rebound at that point. Some of those saving graces is that they may get a chance to rebound prior to calving with some green up. So this is just an example. This is some of our data from the practicum that we use, but looks at the effect of weaning date on cow body condition score. So early wean was in September, late weaned was in late October, 1st November. And so that difference in a little over 30 days resulted in nearly a full body condition score difference at calving. And so this is why it's a really important supplementation strategy is that if I can pull those calves off, allow that cow to rebound, that can be a very cost-effective strategy to put on body condition score in cows before winter or prior to calving. One thing to note in this study is if you look at our preg rates between the two, even though there's a difference in body condition score, there really wasn't a difference in pregnancy rates. And the reason behind that lack of difference is this rate of gain or this rebound going into the breeding season. And we'll talk about that later, is if I have thin cows, can I recover from that? Another avenue is just supplementation strategy. And this very similar data is by having a protein supplement, this would be like a distiller grain supplement versus no supplement during late gestation, resulted in roughly a 3/4 or a full body condition score difference at calving. By just feeding 1 pound per day of this distiller-based supplement, saved a full body condition score prior to calving. And so, I think about whether or not it's a mineral program, it's some protein supplement program, a lot of it's insurance. And I just showed you some data where pregnancy rates weren't different. And if we look at pregnancy rates here, they're no different in supplement versus no supplement. But it's also insurance. It's ensuring that I'm providing the right nutrients for that calf. I'm ensuring that if bad winter hits, that there's enough condition score on these cows to help me get through that winter. And so, because if these cows are in this 4 body condition score or less, it makes it much harder to get through that really cold, stressful winter than that did if those cows were at a 5 or a little above. And so that protein supplement is in essence a really a good insurance policy, even though we can show you data where it was less effective at maybe increasing or changing pregnancy rates down the road. This was some data from Bob Short from Miles City, Montana, that looked at average of weaning date, looked at the average of weaning date and supplement effects on cow body condition score from September to December. And so they either had cows that were dry, that were weaned in September, lactating cows from that September, December, cows that didn't get any supplement, or cows that were supplemented. Very similar to the last two slides that I showed you in the responses of how weaning or a supplementation strategy increasing condition score of cows. So here, dry cows gained about 3/10 of a body condition score by weaning during that time point. Lactating cows nearly lost a full body condition score from September to December. So this is really why using weaning date as a supplementation strategy can be very effective. No supplement, and supplement really resulted in very similar responses. That feeding cows that protein supplement, even though they're lactating during that time frame, helped with body condition scores. No supplement, those cows, they lost body condition score. And so, you know, that weaning time and or a protein supplement has shown to be very similar in the responses of putting condition score on cows up to that December time frame. So one consideration I would have is in this situation that I have thin cows at weaning is sort, especially your young 2s and 3-year-olds. And so one of the biggest problems a lot of guys have, and maybe it's the ability to sort cows and feed them different. It may be pastures, but a lot of times they run their 2s and 3s with the mature cows. And you typically will see those 2s and 3s not handle that very well. They'll be thinner, their reproductive performance can be decreased. But if we can sort thin and these younger females away from the older cows, it really can help with reproductive performance. And now I can really target with nutritional strategies to fit those thinner cows instead of feeding the whole group of cows that may not need that increased in nutritional input. So I can really be strategic with my inputs and target to certain cows that may be thinner than the whole group of cows that I have. So what if my cows are thin at calving? And so this is one of my favorite pictures that I've had. This is a 2-year-old cow in New Mexico. And this is very typical in that environment for cows to calve and look like this and still be very reproductively competent. And so I use this picture a lot because of she really, she's below body condition score 4. She got bred really quickly in that breeding season. But that's a very common practice in a lot of environments, that body condition score really doesn't always work. And not alluding to we shouldn't care about body condition score, but there's some management strategies around that can help us with managing body condition score thin cows.
So Travis,
yep,
there's some data that suggests that where the cows are kind of used to being is really important. So cows that are run in a body condition score 4, the majority of the time they're kind of used to being there, and they perceive 4 differently than a cow that maybe is used to be running a 6.
Yep. So over time, and I'll show you some data I published as long-term data on that would allude to similar to that is, and some of this has to be tied into fertility, of selecting for cows that are highly fertile in that environment. So if we go from a high input situation where I'm managing to have cows in a really good body condition score, and all of a sudden, whether or not it's drought, it's something change in management, those cows end up thin, they don't respond very well. And that's one reason why the data on body condition score says this or this, is that how I manage those cows in that environment, I can select for highly fertile cows or cows that are very productive at a thin body condition score. Or I can, in the same environment, if I manage with a high input situation where I'm managing for a high body condition score, I'm really setting those setting those cows up where they're less flexible or ability to adapt to nutrient stress. And so at a thinner body condition score, they don't do well and they're not very competent. So a lot of that has to do, Mary, with how you manage those cows in that environment. And you know, long term, if I manage cows constantly that are thinner, then they're perfectly fine. They're set for that. They're perfectly fine to be managed in that situation and are just as productive as cows that are in a better body condition score. And so definitely can do that. The problem we run into is when I don't manage that and all of a sudden something happens and then I crash. And so, you know, that's the issue that usually occurs, is not that body condition score is good or bad. It's the scenario around body condition score that could result in a lack of production. The thing with thin cows is I have to constantly manage, meaning that I can't let them get behind in certain scenarios that whether or not it's early lactation, they need to be gaining body weight. If cold stress occurs, they do not have the fat resources on their back to mobilize if I don't have the nutrients in front of them to help them through that. And so you can run some issues that thinner cows may not be able to handle as well as cows in better condition score. And so you still have to manage those cows, but maybe some of the markers or what I'm using as when I need to come in and change some strategies. You've got to be on your toes, and you can't let them fall even farther behind in those scenarios. And so that's an important part, and that's important with cows and get better body condition score as well. But I have less room to play there. And so that's the important part about that is even though we know this works well, I have less room and I can't let them get farther behind. And so, and that's a very good point, Mary. And that's the hard part, taking some of this research and saying we need to be here, because in the real world and applied world, it doesn't always work the way science constantly says this thing is how it goes. But we know some of these things occur. And one thing that can occur is cows in thin body condition score can have calves that have suppressed or low immune status. And that problem is just not a at birth problem. That problem is not a up to weaning problem. That can actually follow them through the rest of their life. And so that's a very important concept of, if I've got cows that are thin, especially cows, I think you'd probably see less of this in cows that are constantly measured or constantly in that thinner condition. Because if you go through your herd, you may average a 5, you're going to have 4s. If I average a 6, you're going to have 5s. And so you always have thinner cows and cows that actually carry more weight under the same nutritional program. And so some cows actually just stay that way. They stay thin year round. And so some of those responses on them may not be the same as others. But we do know that you can have some depressed immune function by having thin cows at calving. And some of this comes from this data here of looking at concentration of IgG status and serum of calves that are 24 hours old. As body condition score declined from a 6 to a 2, they saw that IgG status was declined as well. From this data, it really looks for anything from a 4 up is okay. You get thinner than that, you'll start running into some issues, but it is a pretty clean increase and decrease from a 2 to 6. And so that nutritional status of that cow is really dictating that nutritional flow to that calf prior to calving and after calving as well. And so could be setting up these calves to have problems later on in their life from a immune function due to their body condition score, or how we're managing that now. This is some of the original calving body condition score data that's highly utilized. It's every trade article or a lot of different extension publications or presentations use very similar data as this, is that as calving body condition score decreases, and here it was 4, 5, and 6, pregnancy rates decrease. And so they found the highest preg rates in Cal 6 and lowest preg rates in cows of body condition score 4s. Now, there's some issues with how they set these cows up to get this data, but it does show you that cows in thin body condition score may not be as reproductively competent as cows that have that reserve at calving. And a lot of reason for this lack of reproduction or this preg rate is timing when cows cycle and get pregnant. And so thinner cows require more time to recover from calving and start cycling again. And so to get a cow to maintain a 365-day calving interval, we really need them cycling about day 80 to get pregnant by, at least that need to be pregnant by day 90 to maintain a 365 calving interval. And so as body condition score decreases, it takes more time for those cows to recover and start cycling again. And this is what's really driving that preg rate response that I just showed you, that thinner cows can have lower preg rates. But part of that is nutrition at that postpartum or nutrition at that postpartum or prepartum level. So this was some older data that looked at either low or maintenance level prepartum nutrition, and then postpartum nutrition as well. And so cows that were in the low prepartum, that were in a low nutritional status after calving as well, started cycling again 73 days after calving. If they went from low to high, they started cycling at 54 days after calving. So basically decreased 21 days, so almost a complete cycle that these cows are cycling before that group of cows that were low. From maintenance low was 66 and maintenance high was 68. And so for cows that are thin, it's all about that nutrition after calving. And it's getting those cows gaining body weight as soon as possible will help with decreasing that postpartum interval and getting those cows pregnant. To go back to that slide that I showed, that data from here that showed from either a weaning date or having a supplement or not, that pregnancy rates were exactly the same, even though there was a full body condition score difference at calving, was that rate of gain after calving. Is that compensatory gain kind of flushed them, allow those cows to start cycling again and get pregnant. So this was some data of mine for New Mexico. There's about 9 years of data in this with 2- and 3-year-old cows. Cows that were either body condition score calving of 4, 5, and 6. We look at resumption of estrus, so how long it took them from calving to start cycling again. No difference in resumption of estrus between a cow that's 4, 5, and 6. And the overall preg rates were about 92 to 90%. And really what's driving this is that nutritional status or that supply after calving. Allowing those cows to rebound, even though they're thinner, allows those cows to be very reproductively competent. If my nutritional input after calving is low, that's when I run into a lot of issues. So I can be low prepartum. If I'm low postpartum, I'm going to have some issues. And this can be with the cows that are in better body condition score as well. If they're losing body weight, it is hard to get a cow pregnant. If they're going backwards, it makes it hard to get a cow pregnant. This is some older data from Wilt Bank in 1962. Really illustrates the same thing I just talked about. that body condition score at calving here was cows are in 6.5 versus 4.4. Body condition score 90 days after calving were same, and it's 5.1, 5.2. And the difference was that the postpartum energy level was low in the cows that are around at 6.5 and high in the group of cows that are 4.4. If you look at pregnancy rates, 77 with the cows that calved in a good condition, 95 in cows that calved in a thin condition. So it's all about energy intake after calving. So if I have thin cows, or if I have cows in good condition that I'm not taking care of and let them slip, I could have lower pregnancy rates.
So Travis, that 6.5 slip into 5.5.
Yep.
That's, or 5.1 in this case. That's something I think we see sometimes with fall calving cows.
Yep.
And when you hear people talking about troubles with getting fall calving cows bred, it's because they have lower requirements. When the grass is really good, they get fat, and then as the grass starts failing, that's when we're also trying to breed. And so we got to kind of switch our mentality about condition score telling us everything we need to know.
Yep, and it happens with a lot of purebred guys as well that calve in January. And so, you know, you can easily get cows in a, well, when you increase body condition score, you increase their requirements. And so that cow that's in a 6.5 body condition score has a much higher requirement than a cow that's 4.4. And that's one reason why that these thin cows, it's easier to get them to gaining that body weight after calving, is the requirements are lower. Not saying we should skimp to do that, but the requirements are lower. And so and with those cows that are in this, you know, 6.5 or this really great body condition score, it's so easy to, you know, we see them, they look great at calving. It's so easy to let them slip. And so in those scenarios, like you said, Mary, in a fall calving scenario, in some of these purebred guys that are calving in January, they have this issue of coming in way too high a body condition score. And the nutrient quality is not there. We see that in summer calving scenarios as well, is they rebound after calving because they hit our peak of forage quality, and then they go into July and August into breeding on some really low quality forages, and they were really high in body condition score and they're going downhill. So that can really influence pregnancy rate, is having cows over conditioned going through that time period.
Well, we have so many fall calving cows in southeast Nebraska. I think that's really a place where cover crops can fit in terms of getting a better food source out there for them in that November, December, January period when their demand is so great. And I think there's real opportunity here for enhancing that even more. A good strong third of our cows are probably fall calving cows now. So,
yep, that's a good point, Paul. So, you know, overall, cows in body condition score calving can breed and breed very well if they're not challenged after calving. So you really got to know your system. You really need to know the direction you're headed. And so that's one of the things that people don't understand is not only see that condition score, understanding the direction that I'm heading with my nutrition, with my forage quality. And so that's a very important part of understanding body condition score, is requirements of that cow and where I'm headed with forage quality. Wean earlier if cows are thinner. And so that's a big one that I don't think people realize, and so stuck on, I always wean in November, always wean in December, whenever it is. And it can get you really far behind the ball, especially in young females. And then we seen this a couple years ago, is that cold and winter increases energy requirements. And if those cows are thin, you know, hay quality may limit their intake. And I had a lot of guys call and said, you know, they were full feed on hay, but they dropped to a body condition score 4 or something. And so that hay quality was so low, it just didn't provide that additional energy that required from the increase in cold and wet weather. Lastly, if you continually play catch up or feed to improve your body condition scores, you've got something wrong with your genetics or your management or timing of calving. And so there's an issue there if we have to continually to try to improve or play catch up. And a lot of times it could be genetics. I'm selecting for animals that do not fit.